Let's see. Oh god. Let's see.
Nuclear war would forever split human history into anything that happened before and the post-war apocalypse. In the worst case, mass fires consume everything within tens of thousands of square kilometers, killing
Jesus Christ. Wait. Oh, yeah.
hundreds of millions within hours. But the
Yeah.
worst part comes after that.
Radiation.
Nuclear war could
Nuclear
trigger
winter.
a nuclear winter that might kill billions, maybe even completely collapsing our civilization.
Oh, Jesus.
How does it work? And what would it look like? Fire causes winter. When a nuclear weapon is detonated, a bubble of gas
He got rid of his intro. I don't know if anyone realized that, but he got rid of his intro.
causes winter. When a nuclear weapon is detonated, a bubble of gas hotter than the sun is forced into existence, so hot that everything within kilometers immediately begins to burn. The terror bubble expands rapidly, filling the sky over its target, creating a devastating shockwave that causes most of the immediate destruction. Basically, you break a lot of stuff and set it on fire. And in the
Nice.
worst case, this turns into a firestorm that consumes everything and everyone on the ground.
Damn.
Right after the explosion, a gigantic mushroom
look
cloud
good.
rises over the destruction like a demon throning over its perverse work. But in the following hours, a far more deadly cloud forms. The fire burning cities, forests or fields heats up so much air that it creates its own microclimate and wind system.
Oh, what
Hot
the?
air and hot smoke rise, pulling in fresh air from the surroundings and fresh oxygen, stoking the flames even more.
Oh, yeah.
This creates an updraft and forms a colossal pyrocumulonimbus cloud that carries the soot and aerosols from the flames high into the stratosphere. Under normal conditions, the soot rising from a big fire is quickly washed out by rain. But a pyrocumulonimbus cloud can reach altitudes well above the height where rain clouds form.
Jesus.
Once above the tropopause, there's simply
There's
no
nothing
weather
to
to
stop
remove
it.
soot from the atmosphere, so it can stay aloft for years. If this happens to a single city, it's a tragedy, but a fairly local one. But in a full-scale nuclear war, warring nations following the cold logic of mutually assured destruction could use hundreds or even thousands of nuclear weapons all at once, creating hundreds of firestorms, sending up to 150 million tons of soot, a cube the size of a skyscraper, directly into the stratosphere.
Jesus.
In the next few
man.
days and weeks, the soot begins to blanket the Earth at high altitudes, absorbing light high above the ground and preventing sunlight from reaching the surface.
Yeah.
This
Cools
is not
down.
like science fiction where the sky turns dark and the sun disappears. Winter is what happens when just a little less sunlight hits the ground, and now suddenly a lot less sunlight gets through. Yesterday, the world was normal. Today, nuclear winter begins. Winter causes hunger. How bad nuclear winter would be is still an active area of research. It all hinges on one thing: how much stuff will burn really hot? How many firestorms will be caused by the heat of the explosions? This depends on many factors, from the materials a city is made of, to the time of the year, if a forest is nearby, and so on.
Yeah, there's
So
a lot of
just
variables.
keep in mind, we're working with some assumptions. Here's the good news.
Like,
Nuclear
if it was in a desert, if there was a city in the desert, it would not cause as much damage, like, worldwide than a city in the middle of a forest.
winter is
That
not
thing.
permanent and definitely assumptions. Here's the good news. Nuclear winter is not permanent and definitely no new ice age. The effects on the climate only last as long as the soot remains in the atmosphere, which is at most a decade or so until it clears out and temperatures normalize.
Only
The
10
bad news is that this causes almost immediate climate change within a few weeks. It disrupts our climate system faster than any living being can adapt to. In this new climate, our seasons are suddenly all wrong. Winters are much longer, summers shorter and colder, or gone altogether. This also means less evaporation over the oceans, which means less rain and maybe large-scale droughts. This is
True,
bad
actually,
because
I didn't
our
think about
food
that.
eats the sun. Without good summers and enough rain, growing seasons shrink or even collapse. The majority of humanity lives in an area called the mid-latitudes, a strip of land that has the ideal temperature for our species, not just because it's not too hot or cold, it's also where the plants we eat grow best. The vast majority of the food we eat stems from a few highly efficient crops that are mostly produced in a few very agriculturally productive regions like the US Great Plains or Ukraine. From these bread and
Oh, wow,
rice
Ukraine's a
baskets
huge
of the
producer,
world,
I didn't realise.
they get traded and shipped around the world. In the worst case of a full-scale nuclear war, the temperatures in the mid-latitudes will probably stay below freezing for several years. Nothing at all can grow under these conditions.
So, wait.
In the worst case of a full-scale
So, like, the yellow was, like, probably the best spot for it, I guess. The yellow and the green, I would say.
nuclear war, the temperatures in
Yellow,
the
green, and
mid-latitudes will
orange.
probably stay
So, it'll change to Africa being a huge supplier then. And then, like, a lot of China. Oh, no, not a lot of China. Like, South Asia there, and then Brazil will be a huge supplier then at that point.
below freezing for several years. Nothing at all can
From
grow
that
under
map.
these conditions, and the world's bread baskets would suddenly turn empty. If food production crashes, the world's food producers would very likely ramp up prices or even stop selling food to other countries, if they're still able to farm their fields at all. It's easy to calculate how many people can be alive on Earth. You take all the calories we can produce and divide them by what the average person needs to survive. If you have more people than calories, then within a few weeks, you don't anymore.
Oh,
Humanity
jeez.
has only a few weeks' supply of crops and food, not enough to survive this drastic drop in production. But the climate is not the only issue. Modern industrialized agriculture is a complex affair that relies on functioning supply chains to provide unthinkable amounts of industrially produced fertilizer and chemicals to kill weeds and vermin. Massive numbers of specialized modern machinery is plowing, sowing, harvesting, and distributing. After a nuclear war, especially if the countries that produce the food were part of the nuclear exchange, there may simply be no more fuel, fertilizer, or machine parts because there are no more oil refineries, ports, and other essential
Damn
infrastructure
true.
left, damaging global food production even more.
Oh,
Okay,
true.
so now that we've set the stage, let's look at what science says about the actual wars that could happen. Actual nuclear war. Today, there are two main conflicts that scientists think about when making calculations of nuclear winter: a nuclear war between India and Pakistan, and one between the US and Russia. The most likely smallish nuclear exchange would be fought today between India and Pakistan.
I didn't realize
with
those two. Okay.
relatively low-yield weapons.
I didn't know those two.
Even in a pretty
hands up
mild
against each
nuclear
other.
war like this, the immediate explosions would kill around 27 million people, which
Oh,
is
only
horrible
27 million? That's not much, right? Jesus Christ.
enough. In just a few hours, more people would die than in all of World War I.
Holy shit.
The ensuing fires would not cause a nuclear winter, but a mild nuclear autumn. But even this would disrupt the climate and thereby global agriculture, enough to starve up to 250 million people worldwide. Unfortunately, India and Pakistan are in an arms race and have been increasing the number and power of warheads in their arsenal.
Of course they have.
The next stage of escalation would be war with hundreds of nuclear weapons, the bombs and fires destroying many major population centers
Yeah, and Russia has 3 of the most powerful nuclear bombs in the world. I think it's like the Tsar Bomber. So, yeah.
and killing over 100 million people. A war
Instantly.
on this
Fuck.
scale would cause a nuclear winter that would damage global agriculture enough to cut the available calories for humanity in half. The
Damn.
number of people that starve to death would be as high as 2 billion. One in
Holy fuck. That is like a quarter of just over a quarter of the world's population.
4 humans alive today. The worst case scenario is a full-scale global war between NATO nations and Russia, or China, which also continues to build its nuclear arsenal. In a war between a former, future, and
I swear to God, they were trying to get rid of the freaking nuclear warheads. What's going on, bro?
which also continues to build its
What
nuclear
happened?
arsenal.
What happened?
In a war between a former, future, and current superpower, thousands of nuclear weapons could be detonated. In a scenario with around 4,400 nuclear weapons, 360 million people would perish right away. We have no other event to even compare the death and destruction to. It's like humanity dropping an asteroid on itself. The nuclear winter that follows such an apocalyptic war would tank human calorie production by as much as 90%. Not only would almost
I don't think humanity can recover from that.
all of our agriculture take an immediate and deadly hit, the climate would take at least a decade to recover. Because a war like this would specifically hit the world regions that produce most of the food for humanity, recovery will be much, much harder than with other conflicts. Within 2 years, the global death toll from starvation could rise to about 5 billion. In mid-latitude
Over half.
countries like Russia, China, Canada, the US and much of Europe, only a few percent of the population might survive.
Thank God Australia survives, bro. Holy shit. Oh my God. I mean, we don't really.
Humanity
In a
will
way.
never be the same again. While nowhere is truly safe, some nations in the southern hemisphere may fare well enough to endure,
But from the nuclear winter, probably not that well.
while the rest of the world collapses. All the nuclear weapon states are in the northern hemisphere, so a few countries like Australia, New Zealand and Argentina may be able to endure for a bunch of different reasons. Their nuclear winter would be milder, they have a lot of livestock that would not be as affected as crops, so they would probably stop exporting food and focus on keeping their own people alive.
Yeah, we're like, fuck yous. You caused this, I'm out.
Assuming they aren't invaded for their food by other starving nations.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah, I forgot about that.
It's
Yeah, but would they have the people to invade at that point?
safe to say that the world would become extremely unpleasant for a long time, and it's impossible to know how many people would have died when the nuclear winter ends. In the worst case, human civilization could collapse and the survivors would be thrown back thousands of years, slowly trying to recover a world full of scars and graves.
Jesus.
Eventually, when they've rebuilt civilization, would they ever build nuclear weapons again?
Depends, is there gonna be conflicts for resources? Because that's probably, that'd be the main reason. That's the main reason, like, literally resources. So it depends. Are we gonna live peacefully and exchange resources equally? Or are there gonna be people who hoard? And if there's people who hoard, then that's not gonna go well. So
We know for sure
it all depends on like what people would do with the resources at hand.
that we need to do
Really?
anything we can to make sure nuclear war never happens. This video was supported by Open Philanthropy. If you want to know what you can
Swear I've
do
heard
to
that word
reduce the
before.
risk of nuclear war, you can either support expert organizations or become a citizen expert yourself and learn more. We've compiled a list of further reading and expert recommendations in the info box and our sources doc for you. Thank you so much for helping
Damn.
us clear out the Kurzgesagt warehouse for our big move. But
Huh?
watch out. Sometimes creepy things are hiding behind those boxes.
Oh god, is that
Wild
dude again?
dread appears. What will you do? Quick, grab something from one of those boxes to defend yourself.
Pokemon,
You
bro.
used or it's very effective against dread. Look, you've unlocked some amazing deals. Save up to 50% on awe-inspiring products in
my
our
God.
biggest sale ever.
It's well
Some of
done.
our finest creations are eager to find a new home, like the Duck Plushie, our
Yo,
cleverly
I want
designed
that.
notebook series, and a few of our very best infographic posters. The Burbs will be moving the last boxes to the new warehouse soon, so grab a
Yeah, go
notebook,
on,
plushie,
Burbs.
pin or poster before the moving sale ends, or before Dread gets a hold of them. The birds
Yeah, we don't want
really
dread that.
appreciate
We don't
it.
want dread, bro. Oh wait, is this like? Oh, look at that. Meh. Koala's best limited edition. Interesting. But yeah, that is that video, man. It'll be very good if this never happens. It'd be very good if it, like, you know, it never happens. But it's more like, oh god, bro. It'd be, oh Jesus. I don't even know what to say, man. Like, it would just be bad if it happens. Jeez.